the best experience for your children and for your family as possible. Certainly after this brief presentation, there'll be lots of times for questions so that you can share what's on your mind and get some answers to your questions. So we always like to start with our mission statement. So I'm going to take a moment to pause to reset our goals as a community, as this is really our focus for our school. As I reread this mission over and over again, as we present it at most of our community meetings, there's many exciting words for preparing our students for the future. But what really stands out for me most recently is the line about instilling a positive outlook and a certainty for our young people, especially in a time where there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and a lot of uncertainty. And how did we work through that, and how we will continue to work through that moving forward. And that was our mission when this was developed several years ago, and how important that mission still is as we move forward. So really our goal is about instilling that positivity to our students, to our families, to our faculty and staff, so that working together to help everyone move forward in these uncertain times. So it's all about the learning. That's why we're here at schools. If you look at these pictures, you'll see that there's learning that's happening across grades, across disciplines, across environments in our school, everything from the core subjects of mathematics and language arts and sciences. But when you look at these pictures, there's so much that it says about our school. It's not just about the teaching and learning, which of course is most important, but everything that supports that. It's the environment that students are in so that they can feel creative, so they can feel safe to take risks. It's about the people that they interact with, the relationships between student to student and faculty to student and faculty and staff and faculty to faculty and families and students and family and faculty. And all those relationships are so important as we navigate your child's school experience. And that doesn't mean that we don't have disagreements and we don't have conversations about where we're moving forward, but it's about having trust in the relationship that we could bring our ideas to the table and continue to learn and grow. We model that as adults so that we can help our students navigate those same environments moving forward. So you see that creativity, that thinking, that learning really jumping out in these pictures across the divisions within our school. Oops. And then we move beyond our classroom. There's lots of things that have been happening, and we were so excited to be able to bring so many things back this year as the year developed. Actually, I think I jumped 2 spaces. Beyond the classroom, when swim instruction came back, all of our athletics were up and running. We became champions again in many areas in athletics, even after students had had more than a year off of really competitive athletics. We were excited to get that back. Our DEIJ learning and celebrations, and how the students have stood up and really have pushed us to think more deeply about that. This year, one of the big accomplishments was really recognize our Chinese community and our Asian community within Leman, and the students took the lead on that and making sure that we didn't pass by Lunar New Year with just an acknowledgement this year, and it really was a ground root effort in moving forward. It's just one of the areas of celebration, and I'll talk a little bit more about our continuation in that area. There were after school was brought back, all of the clubs and activities were brought back this year, and lots of learning happens in those areas. How to collaborate, how to problem solve, how to be resilient in times of angst and anxiety, how to begin again, how to take leadership. And all of those things are happening within these activities that are happening outside the classroom. And then we brought back lots of our traditions and added some new to it as we were moving forward. There were trips to Governor's Island. Our seniors went there and they were so excited to be together again. Our science fair, our Model UN team went up to Cornell this year, which was exciting. We just completed a Duke and Edinburgh camping trip with 40 students over 3 days who camped many miles. And my understanding, it was quite rigorous, but they all made it through unscathed. So that's that's exciting, and really work as a team. There's another trip coming back for our silver members who will be going on a trip in a couple of weeks. We went back to our Philadelphia trip in fourth grade. We'll be going to our Frost Valley trip. The fifth graders are very excited about going back there. We've been able to introduce back in-person concerts and art exhibits. There's an art exhibit over at the upper school. If you haven't seen it, it's quite impressive. There'll also be the days of learning in the lower school. Many of you experienced them in December. Those will be happening again over the next several weeks. You'll be getting more information. And our seniors have lots to look forward to. As you probably know, they're in the middle of their IB exams right now, so they're a little stressed. But at the end of those exams comes their senior week, and there's lots that happen. They have a pinning day where they get to share their accomplishments for colleges acceptances. There'll be a prom and their senior awards, and of course our graduation. And although we had a graduation in person last year, we did it in shifts and smaller groups. We are so excited to be able to have our graduation in full this year in our ballroom. So college acceptances, when we think about the endpoint, it is about what students do beyond our school, and it's about the outcomes that they have achieved all along the way. And I'm sure as you've been reading in our newsletters, as we're so proud of our students, is this year has also been a great year for college acceptances. Students will be attending Harvard and Stanford, Princeton and Brown just this year. But you'll notice on here that there are many accomplishments in our college acceptances. We now have all of the 8 Ivy Leagues on our college list, which we're excited about, but also the highly selective institutions, specialized art schools, the historic Black colleges and universities, international schools. We're having more and more students applying for early decisions and getting into early decisions, which is exciting. And what's most impressive to me is we are only graduating our 10th graduating class. So that is quite an impressive list when we're being compared with schools that have been around for 50, 100, 150 years who have the same list. In 10 years, this is what our students have been able to accomplish. And that doesn't just happen. It happens with the instruction that is going on throughout the years, the dedication of the teachers, the collaboration with the families. Dennis Vasquez, our director of college counseling, has really just in 1 year has continued to transform our college counseling department. You'll hear a little bit more about that. And I encourage everyone to follow the students on our Leman class of 2022 on Instagram. You'll see their excitement. There are still acceptances that are coming in, whether it's students that are still waiting for international acceptances or possibly deferments and not deferments on waiting lists and are now being accepted into school. So it's still an exciting time. And when we get to that pinning day, students really have the opportunity to celebrate their accomplishments. So how does Leman continue to grow? We know that COVID affected and impacted everyone in the world, and certainly in New York City, certainly independent schools, and certainly Leman also. And it was a time where we did lose students and faculty and staff because people made decisions to move on, to leave the city. And we were able to regroup to be able to open school and to really make decisions about our school that would poise us to be in the position where we are now, so that as the pandemic is ending, that we could bring back, have the capacity to rebuild our school, to build back to where we had come from, and to be really thoughtful about that so that we didn't have to rush and feel desperate about that. We feel like we're in a wonderful place to really have a path to thoughtful growth. There are really some very impressive statistics that we're seeing in the enrollment. We're excited about where we are in the enrollment cycle. We are welcoming more than 100 new students already this for next year, as well as 25 new boarding. One of the parents asked me about how our boarding program was doing at this time, and you may recall that during the worst of pandemic, we had about 12 to 15 students on campus and boarding. Now, we had many students that were working asynchronously, which was a challenge when we had students in Asia and South America and Europe at all different time frames, but we got them through the year. This year, we have more than 40 students back living in boarding, and next year, we're expecting closer to 60. As we move forward. And so that is really exciting because our optimal number was about 100 pre-COVID. So we feel like we're already making that leap back Excited about that. We've also had a good re-enrollment rate. You know, we had averaged about from 80 to 85%. We're expecting about 86% this year based on where we are at this moment. And to us, that tells us that people are happy with the experience that they've been receiving at Leman. They're happy with the program that their children are receiving and the commitment that we're making. So we're excited about that. Our 6th grade enrollment is at an all-time high. And that's really due to the work of our admissions department, who has been building relationships with ascending schools, building relationships with consultants, building relationships with families as we move forward. Our 9th grade is at pre-pandemic levels. We're expecting another robust 9th grade enrollment, new enrollments. We have increased families coming from public schools. I think that is we had been seeing that growing pre-pandemic. We see it continuing to grow post-pandemic. And I think some of that is how the New York City has been challenged by how to adapt to the changing world, which is understandable with the amount of students they have, but we do see benefits from that. Our yield has doubled, meaning that students that once families come to visit us and decide to apply, we're closer to 50% now of people that once they come to our school are choosing us as Leman. And that really has to do with an increased reputation building that has been really a very intentional effort to get the word out there about all the wonderful things that are happening at Leman. And it is amazing and impressive that here in New York City, where we're such a sophisticated city, word of mouth is still most important. So to me, that also says that you as families, when you have a positive experience at our school, you are also talking about that. We often hear from our families that they heard it from another family or from another student, or their child has a friend that attends here and is so happy and they want to hear more about the school. So we are also, as we move forward, increasing our admissions and marketing personnel, because that really is the foundation of our school and where our students come from. And our admissions personnel are so clear about who are the students that can thrive here at Leman, and the families that would benefit from this type of education, that believe in the mission that you saw before, that we're an international school, that we're preparing students for the future to be able to navigate a diverse international world. And we know how important that is for our students. There's always areas of opportunity. As I said earlier, word of mouth is so important. You've been seeing some of our messages to you is get it out there, you know, go on Niche, go on some of the sites and talk about your experience that you're having here, talk to your friends. That's important for us in building a relationship. Again, when we are a school that is about 17 years old in comparison to other schools that are around a long time. We have started this year and will continue next year to increase our enrollment committee to help staff and faculty be more involved in the enrollment process and understand their role in that, because it does always come down to the experience that students are having in the classroom. And we continue outreach in our community. And how do we get that word outside of these walls? One of the ways is our students are navigating outside the world. I was recently in Starbucks, and I think I've shared this story before, and the manager in Starbucks, I saw some students not behaving, they weren't ours, and I did go to the manager and gave her my card and said, if you ever see a Leman student that is not being respectful in here, please contact me, because we send our students out into the community and we want them to be respectful. And she said, I see that uniform, and I've never had a problem with the students coming into Starbucks. That says a lot about our students. And, you know, as we think about our own children, we know how they are in our home, and then you go to a conference and you hear how wonderful they are, and you think, is that the same child that is talking to me at home? But it is because of the foundation that you've set and the foundation that's being held here at school. So, you know, we will have some new academic leadership next year. Again, change occurs. We celebrate change for people. That's what education is about. We'll be welcoming Saba Rashid into our early child and lower school. She comes to us with many years of experience and lots of experience in IB and assessing IB schools across the grade, which will really help us to continue to build that foundation of the approaches to teaching and learning and what's important about preparing students so that they continue to be successful through the years. As you may know, you've seen information, she's visiting on May 16th. So everyone that has children in early childhood or lower school, please come out and meet her, be able to ask her questions. She was only able to attend because of her proximity online through the interview process. So we're excited to have her here in person. So please join us for that. Many families met Dr. Leonard Dartos. He was here for 2 days just a few weeks ago and spent a lot of time with faculty, with the administration there, with visiting the school environment, working with the other leaders up there. He also met with parents and faculty. As I said, he also comes with more than 30 years of experience in education, but for 15 years, he's been leading an IB school, and he started the IB at school, at the IB program at that school, which means he really has a deep understanding, because to be able to be accredited as an IB school, you really have to understand the foundation of IB. So we're excited about bringing him in, being part of our senior leadership team, working with already our accomplished leaders. He's excited to be here. He's already involved in the process. He's involved in hiring staff members in the upper school already. So he's already committed to Leman. We're excited to have him join us. And then we want to appreciate all of our team members here. Of course, there will be team members that leave our community. It happens every year. And I think, as I said earlier, this is a time of year where there's lots of reflection on life and people making decisions. But I am really excited to say that we have our lowest attrition rate of faculty than we've ever had at Leman. And so we have our highest retention rate of faculty staying on at Leman. And I think almost all of the faculty that are leaving the school have decided to move out of the city and go to other areas. But the fact that faculty are staying here, I think, they've been committed to Leman, they're committed to the families and the students here at Leman, and they're also committed to the program here and what we've been able to do through the pandemic. So although, there's always changes that happen, we're excited that, the heart of our school, our teachers, are staying with us and will continue to move your children forward. So we will continue to learn and grow together. As those of you that have been here a while know, that we had instituted a strategic plan in 2019 that would go to 2024. And much of that work has continued even through the pandemic, although some of it has not moved probably as quickly because of the other commitments that we needed to make during the pandemic around health and safety, about the limitations we had during hybrid times and whatnot. So I want to just bring this back into focus. There were really four main areas of the strategic plan. Certainly academic rigor, and it was really about bringing a differentiated academic program, continue to grow the IB. I think that has been happened, really looking at outcomes and assessment. We've had a focus the last couple of years on math, and that will continue to move forward. One of the reasons of changing the structure in the lower school was to have Maria Sweeney, who was really hired as a director of curriculum, which is really where her passion and her interest and her expertise lies. And as a full-time director of curriculum, she'll be able to also help continue to guide our department chairs and our teaching and learning, continue to push the math forward, continue with the accreditation process, and move forward with academic. It also is about instructional excellence, and that really looks at how we look at what we're doing. How do we self-reflect? How do we triangulate the data that we're looking at? So student outcomes, college acceptances, the responses on the accreditation survey. Thank you for all of you that have answered that. It was really positive. But how do we continue to build that instructional excellence as things change in the world? And I think that's one of the things that is unique about Leman. We're not so steeped in tradition that trying to change something because we know that what students need for the future, because we're sending them out into a very uncertain work world. Things are changing very rapidly. So how do we build the skills and the qualities that they need of resilience and flexibility and open-minded and internationality? Because we know that students are going to have to develop the ability to navigate a very diverse world. And so when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and I'll talk a little bit about how it's an integrated process, it's because students need that to be successful in the world. And that is our job, is to help them to meet with success. The thoughtful growth we talked about is that we are growing back slowly and thoughtfully so that we have a community that believes in our mission and continue to thrive here. And all of that builds the community spirit and strength. And I think we're already seeing that as we bring back activities, ways to reconnect in person. We see the community spirit growing at the athletics, competitive athletic programs in the high school. We've had more students staying for games and rooting on their classmates than probably ever before. You've seen at many of our fine art events that the theater in the upper school or in here are packed with families and students attending. It was so nice for me to see at the concerts last week, both the choral concert and the instrumental concert, which if you got to see were wonderful. But to see seniors coming back to cheer on other friends in those activities. So that's about community spirit and pride in the school. When we talk about results, at the last meeting, we shared these MAP results, which was the first year we're doing the measure of academic progress. We do it through second grade through 10th grade, and we're really impressed by the baseline data because we were outperforming other independent schools and public schools. So we shared this earlier, got to see that. We are in the process of completing the second round of that now toward the end of the year. Whoops. We have completed grade 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, you will see that Leman is outperforming the others. So again, we will look at this as a piece of data with other assessments that we're using, as well as student report cards and information that you're sharing. But this data is really encouraging in the first year, and now seeing a second piece of data to see that continued growth in our students. The middle school and high school are still in the process of completing that. Well, that's why that data isn't there yet. Over the next couple of weeks, I know in the lower school, the first round of assessments were shared at conference time. I know the high school, middle school and high school is preparing to also share those, looking for ways to share those. And then everyone will have access to all of the results, as you always have with the testing at the end of the year. So what do we have to look forward to? A lot. As I mentioned before, having Maria, the director of curriculum, it really continues to grow our administrative team, where she can have that eye, on that, just as we have, a director of college counseling has a real eye on college counseling, a director of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice that has an eye on that. Now, it doesn't mean that any of those one persons are responsible for it all, because we all have to work collaboratively. Nothing can happen with one person, but the more we can build people really having some specific roles, that helps us build our program. The reaccreditation process, which we will complete next spring, but we have been in the process. We have committees working that parents are also involved in that are look at every area of our school, from finance to governance to academic program to extracurricular activities. Everything is looked at with a fine-tooth comb by ourselves. We get to self-reflect, create an action plan, and then an outside accreditation team looks at the information, looks at it from our 2015 report. How have we grown? How have we improved? How do we move forward? We will be sharing information with you along the way as we put in that report. We are confident about reaccreditation. Maria Sweeney is also a commissioner on the reaccreditation board, so she has a really intense understanding of what is needed to be reaccredited, so we're excited about that. We've already been increasing our world language program. Our goal is to have world language 5 days a week through 5th grade, so that by the time students are going into middle school and high school, they are fluent in a language and they really have the ability to access high-level language, which is why we also collaborating with the École to add a French diploma program to our already rigorous high school program. We already offer a bilingual diploma in Mandarin. We'll be now adding French, and we're hoping in a year to also add Spanish. So that really pushes students to push themselves in high language learning, and that means in 9th and 10th grade, they can take humanities and language arts courses in that language that they're taking. So eventually it'll be Mandarin, French, and Spanish, and that's exciting for our school, and certainly a differentiator than many schools that are not completely bilingual. We are expanding our college counseling reach. As I said, Dennis Vasquez has lots of exciting ideas for expanding that, not just reaching out to new colleges and universities to bring to our fair, but also pushing down how we're talking to students into middle school. And she's already starting with 8th grade to help them to understand how to build a profile. What does it mean to start thinking about where your strengths are, where your interests are? What do you know about colleges? What do you know about the college processes earlier, so that it's not saved till 10th grade or 11th grade, and also providing information for families earlier. We will continue with our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work. As you know, during very difficult times, we have developed an anti-racist plan. We're in the process of assessing that. And there were goals around our hiring practices, which we continue to diversify our staff and faculty so that it matches the population of our school. And that would be certainly in race, in gender, in experience, in nationality. So there's a lot of ways that we are continuing to diversify our staff. It also is about providing avenues for students in particular, but also families to be able to share information. And if you remember, we have created the bias reporting system, which has been really positive, because if you remember way back when at the Black at Leman, what really came out of that was about communication, that there was a lack of communication. Sometimes students didn't feel that things were followed up on, or that they didn't have an avenue to go to. And now that is built in, and there's a system for that. And it can be, and what has come up for us through that, and we're excited that we're receiving reports, otherwise it's not working, but it might be around gender, it might be about sexuality, it might be about race. And it helps us to look at, where do we still have work to do? Where are gaps in our learning about building diversity? And again, you ask why? Why is that important for a school? Because it impacts the school. You've heard about students that have lost college acceptances, people that have lost jobs because they can't navigate that diversity. Our students have the gift to be able to navigate that within a very diverse international school. So we have to be aware of where are our gaps and how can we help them have better conversations. Doesn't mean that we're changing everyone's mind, or that we have, that we're have the answer to everything, but we want to be able to open avenues where people feel that they can have safe discussions, bring up feelings, bring up areas that they have concerns in. We'll use data to guide our next steps and focus on a collective integration. And that means we look at, again, when we look at our gaps, are we including representation from all of our community in the books we read? Are we including, accurate historical information across history? And that's one of the beauties of IB, because it looks at history from a very local perspective as well as a global perspective. So we're able to look at that across the world, not just the United States. How do we continue to train our adults so they can have these good conversations? That's part of integration. Also, how do we look at things from the lens of making sure that everyone feels seen and heard and valued? And that's students, that's faculty, that's staff, and that's families. So we move forward, we continue to grow and learn. We are so excited about the future of Leman. We are already planning for next year, the administrative team, as we move forward. But at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions. As I said earlier, there are people that are on Zoom, and so Paige will be taking questions from them also. Lisa Nowicki and Steve Levin will have a microphone, so if you have questions, they'll come around. So what's on your mind that either I didn't cover or you want more information about that I can answer for you? Maya.
Hi, thank you. My question was about the MAP test. And can you go back to that slide?
Sure.
From April? I don't think I got it. What is the PN? What does it mean? The next one, yeah. PN.
Maria Sweeney, do you want to talk?
And I guess my follow-up question. Oh, okay. Okay. And I guess my other question is, how common is the MAP nationwide, internationally? Are these scores of independent schools only in the US or with international? Just a bit more context about the test.
Yeah, the independent schools include independent schools here in the US and international schools, and it is used quite prevalently in international schools.
Thank you.
And a growing number of schools using it in the United States too, because the map is actually more closely related to the Common Core than the ERBs were. So people are seeing it's more of it really helps us to assess the work that we're doing here. And it really is for us. I know we look at it as students and we want to look at students' progress, but it also helps us to look at where do we need to continue to grow. Other questions? We like to give think time.
How far away is the Spanish-English dual IB?
Where I'm hoping, my goal is to offer the Spanish next year. Not this coming year, we ought, 2022, 23, French is being added. The hope is, the plan is that the following year Spanish will be added. So that means if it starts in 9th and 10th grade, for the 9th and 10th grade, it will move up into the diploma program also, which also means for families that are probably not in the high school yet, students get an American style high school diploma. Students that do full IB also can get on top of that an extra certification, which is the IB diploma. If they're not doing the full IB, they can get certifications in particular areas where they take the tests. Currently, students can also get a bilingual diploma in Mandarin. They will eventually be able to get a bilingual diploma on top of all that in French, and then also Spanish. We also added this year, and we'll continue next year, is independent language learning. So students that really want to know another language other than Mandarin, Spanish, and French can do independent learning, work with them. Luz, our director of IB program, helps with that too. We help finding a teacher with assessments and making sure that they're following a curriculum in that language area. So the importance of language, we've certainly heard loud and clear from outside of our community, but also within our community and being an international community, the importance of that. So that's one of the reasons I believe also our college results are so good, is because IB, I've been saying this for a number of years, and I think we're seeing in our college results, is really the gold standard for college acceptances now. And the reason for that, different from the AP, is because the type of the work that students are doing is much more college preparatory, much more college-like. It's more writing across disciplines. It's more independent thinking. Students pick topics of their interest and choice, so they have to do a lot of that independent, which is why one of the approaches to teaching and learning is building that independence, right? Self-starters, initiation. And we know that from our youngest learners, where we start to build independence, to really our upper school, where we scaffold, but we start to take away, gradually release the responsibility. So by the time they get to college and university, and all of a sudden they're on their own, right? Parents can't follow them around anymore. The teacher's not going to say, you didn't do your work, you didn't do your work anymore. Saw it with my own, by my fourth child, I was much better with that. Not so good with the first, second, and third, fourth, got it. Like let him fall on his face in fourth grade, because he'd be more prepared to handle that in older grades. So it's really building that independence. And what we hear over and over again, and I heard this in my past school also, which was a much longer, 75 years, but 50 years of an IB school, it was one of the earlier IB schools, is that students come back from their first year of college and say, I felt so prepared. I may not have entered college thinking I was the smartest person in my class, but I was the most prepared. And we heard that on the videos, if you were here earlier in the fall, from some of the students. I think Manny, he has a brother here in high school now, he's in Brown, and he was a very smart student. So to say he wasn't the smartest student in his class, but he said he felt like he was the most prepared, and that comes from the IB. So whether you're doing full IB or not full IB, you're doing some IB, and you're getting that experience of independently working through the type of work that IB offers for you. And then when you do the full IB, you're doing the extended XA and the TOK class, and all of that is very college-like.
Maria, a few questions
Yes.
on the chat. Good morning, everyone. Those are 3 questions that have come in on the chat. The first is from Sandra Brandon about the increase in world language, and if we can share a little bit more about what does that mean? Is it more classes or more time?
Both. So to have more classes would also increase the time. So students would get language 5 days a week. It provides a consistency of having the language every day, because we do know the younger the learner, we've already had moved it to 4 or 5 days, depending on the grade in early childhood and moving up to kindergarten. But understand, especially with young children, but I would dare to say even older children, when there's a break in that learning, it sometimes can cause a lack of, consistency. So having it every day, and again, clearly articulate, we are not a bilingual school. It's not like one day is in Spanish and the other day is in English and one day is in Spanish, but having a language every day, the goal to build greater fluency and competency in a language, to work a little bit more on writing, on listening and speaking is important. We already see students taking high levels of language, both in middle school and high school. This is just going to increase the amount of students that are able to do that and really be able to leave Leman being bilingual. You have another question?
Yes, second question is, with the pandemic coming to an end and with the world opening back up, will Leman return to an international trip for students?
That is the goal. I mean, we've started some of the domestic trips this year, and the goal will be moving towards the international trip. Right now we're seeing the increase. We're also seeing some areas of the world that are not as open as others. So it's something we will continue to watch, but I definitely see that coming in the future.
Thank you for the great information. My question is with regards to the DEIJ work. Are there any committees that families can participate in? I mean, it's great that the students, faculty, and staff are heavily involved in this, and it continues to increase. But is there a committee or some activities that families can be a part of, because it makes sense for the full community to be involved as much as possible?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have the Values and Belief Committee, and there are a couple of parents that are in here that have been actively involved in that. And Lakia Burrell, our coordinator for DEIJ, is shifting that and really kind of restructuring that to be more effective and look for ways to involve parents. We've tried very hard to get parents involved in the conversation. That's been a bit of a challenge for us. I know some of it is time and then with the pandemic and not being able to be in person, because it's can be challenging conversations when we're talking. We all have different opinions and we bring different experiences to the table and acknowledge that. I think that was probably some of the most powerful work we did as a faculty and staff over the past year, is really first understanding yourself and what are the experiences and that you bring to the table, and how does that affect the lenses that you look through. And so the faculty and staff did a lot of that so that they could then be more open of understanding other experiences in the classroom. I think that same kind of work with families, when we look around our families, we have a very diverse population. People bring lots of interesting experiences, and we can support each other in our learning. So we've tried book talks, we've tried gatherings, and we've got very low participation. So I think now that things are opening up and we can bring people back into the community, the goal would be to continue to try to build that. I guess I would also say, if you have ideas and suggestions on how to do that and where you want to be involved. I know with the POCC group, Rishima, and I see some of the members here, you've been able to get that group very activated and bring in speakers and work. We haven't been able to do that necessarily with the general population. So we will continue to work on that.
Marie, go ahead.
First, I just want to thank you and your staff. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and thank you all for everything you're doing. And I also wanted to point out that education from the pandemic has never stopped with Leman, and we just commend you and your staff. My question is, with the pandemic slowly declining, the anxiety has been on the rise, depression on the rise, the use of social media, in some cases, substance abuse, and how is Leman in just say in both campuses going to focus on supporting students, because I definitely see that as a parent and just talks with other parents.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's something that we're in constant conversation about. I'm looking at Megan Hallam, Dr. Megan Hallam, who is the Director of Student Support Services. And we have increased counseling this year. So we have 2 full-time social emotional counselors in the upper school, as well as increased college counseling. And that also has allowed the psychologists here at the lower school to be full-time here in the lower school. So that continuation consideration of having access to students. We've looked at programming. We do know and do believe that that's probably the longest lasting impact of COVID that's going to be is the social emotional well-being of all of us, but certainly of young people. I think, thank goodness we will be able to continue to stay open and provide some of those connections, but we see it also. And we have students that came to us, especially this year, from a variety of experiences. Some students that came from public school hadn't been in school for almost 2 years, right? So their experience was very different than a student that had been at Leman or possibly another school. So trying to navigate that. So we are already talking about, how is that going to look next year? One of the things that we are doing is we're having more faculty days before the start of schools. We have 7 days of professional days for faculty before school starts, so we can start to do that prep work, which is already happening this year, but also at the beginning of next year, so that we are well prepared. I think, we were also excited to be fully back this year, across the city, that I think, maybe we underestimated a little bit, that after that initial glee wore off, is all of this we're seeing, right, is the anxiety and depression, and so it happens. So I think acknowledging it first, having the staff that have the knowledge, and they, our counseling staff have done presentations for faculty, for staff, for students, have worked with advisory to use that time, morning meetings in the younger grades. So it's something we're going to continue to work on, because we also know, you might say, well, we don't want to take from the academics. If students aren't feeling comfortable and safe, they're not accessing the academics anyways. And that was one of our goals, even through the height of the pandemic, was we had to be more narrow in what we were doing and what was important, but also focus on those connections, the social and emotional connections. So I think we're seeing that across all grades a little bit. And we'll just continue to work on that. And that would also be a way, going back to your question, Rashima, is to get parents involved, because the social emotional well-being also is impacted by students' experiences also outside of school. Many students have experienced loss, right? Loss of family members, loss of family members in their work, losing jobs, or people moving out of the area, loss of friendships, all those kind of things. So I think, maybe that's access in, is to start to talk about, where we are now and how our experience have brought us all here. And I think one of the things we talk about all the time is no one person, no one body can do it alone. So the school can't do it without the family support. Families can't do it all without the school support, without the teacher support, without the other students' support. So it's important for us all to continue to get involved. You'll be hearing more information about that, also more specifics.
I'd like to share a question from the chat. What is the total number of new students enrolling in the high school next year? And what is the goal for high school class size? How can you maintain a classroom as an average?
Yeah, I think I'll start at the end. Maintaining the average classroom is staffing appropriately for the number of students that come in. Our goal is about 200 new students, new day students, and about 25 plus, about 30 boarders coming in. So that's a lot of new students. Now, take out that you have 100 graduating, so it's not bringing in 250 new students. That would be a lot. So the average class size will remain about the same. And again, in the high school and middle school, especially the high school, it's a little different because it depends on course selection. You might see a very small Mandarin class and a larger Spanish class. More students are interested in taking Spanish, but the average class still remains around 15. Some are lower, some are a little bit higher. We are already looking at, based on the numbers, if we reach all the enrollment goals of building incremental staff members, faculty members, so that really maintains the class size. When you look at that breakdown, the largest numbers, as you saw in there, 6th grade is a large impact this year. High school, 9th grade is always one of our largest intake students, which can range anywhere from 35 to 50 new students coming in. So I would say across middle school and high school, probably you're still going to get more than, I would say, probably more than half of those new students are going to be in middle school and high school, and the largest number is going to be in high school. So it'll be, the high school has already also maintained its numbers. Where we see the biggest challenge is early childhood, and that makes sense, right? Those are families that can leave the city easier. Their students aren't connected to necessarily schools. They don't have to be in school, and they're the unvaccinated students. So those, and that's across the city, a slower enrollment process for early childhood. Gavin Boyce, one of our admissions associates here, and he does mostly all middle school and high school, and he's been very busy over these last several months because of the activity for middle school and high school. So it is an active pipeline there. Other questions?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So Marie, I have a question for the lower school, okay? During class placements at the end of the school year, Jerry used to be so involved with that, with the advisors. With him being not around and Saba doesn't really have a relationship with all our students, will you still get recommendation from Jerry regarding students' placement on respective advisors?
Yeah, I mean, Dan and I, Dr. Cantone and I are already working on that together. I'll be heavily involved in that. I do know the students there. So I feel like that is already under control. Obviously, the teachers have the most information. Luckily, also Dan Cantone has taught all the students, having been the PE teacher. So he has a personal knowledge of every student. And I'm in regular contact with Jerry, so certainly has input for any questions. And then over the summer also, as it's always been, because many of the administrators need a break, as new families come in or if things change for people, I'm always available to contact and involved in the enrollment process there. So, I certainly will reach out to Jerry for any questions, but I've been very personally involved. I've talked to some families individually, so if you've talked to Dan, great, we share that information. If you feel like there's information about your child that we need to know, you're also welcome to contact me. But we feel on top of that, don't we, Dan? Yeah, we really do.
Good morning. I just had a question with so many new students coming in, which is wonderful news. What are the plans for new faculty hires?
Yeah, we're already in the process of that. We were lucky to get out there for the administrative positions, and we have other positions we're looking at now that are posted. We already have some postings for, the tentative staff that faculty and staff will be hiring. We always do it by committee. As I said, the new administrators in those areas want to be involved in that process already, and they will be. When we lost students, we staffed appropriately, and as we gain students, I hope you can trust that we will continue to staff properly. So, it's an interesting time. I'm sure many of you in your own work lives, it's an interesting time for hiring people and people making decisions. I mean, in education, it used to be very much a cycle. That cycle is no longer the case. People are making decisions later than they may have in the past, earlier maybe than they have in the past. So, but I feel confident that we will have the staffing that is needed for the number of students we have. And we meet almost daily, but certainly weekly. I'm looking at where we are, the numbers, going through the staffing. I don't know if you've all met Scott Thompson, who is a president and CFO, and he is regularly working with us also to look at that and to approve incremental hires, and we're working closely on that. So I feel confident in that. Angela? Yeah, it's on.
Hi, good morning. So first of all, I just want to thank you, Maria, for your leadership. This is our 12th year at Leman, and we've been through a lot. And so I want to reach out and just thank you. The communication piece, particularly through the pandemic, we felt like you had the well-being of the students front and center while maintaining the academics. And to support such a tremendous and long-standing faculty and administration is truly impressive. I've sat in this room for many years, so seeing all the results, seeing the way, and now of course we're going into senior year, seeing the sort of outcomes of that work and that decade of graduating classes is really impressive. So my question is on the tail end of alumni. So now you have 10 graduating years of students. So you have some students who are still in college or doing a master's, and you have some students in the workplace. Could you just speak a little bit about, it may be very fledgling, it may not even exist yet because of this timing, but what are the expectations for setting up an alumni committee, places where students can talk to other students who are at a university that they may want to go to, or to be able to gain some insight into internships or potential work placements down the road?
Yeah, thank you for that question. A couple of years ago, we did start an alumni committee. And as you mentioned, you know, it's a young alumni group, and we started to have events here. We've had a number of events here. We've invited, you know, we had 2013 was our first graduating class, so it's fairly young. And there are some that are out to the workforce now. We're in communication with them. So we're looking, it's now the time for us to start looking at how to use them more, because they're asking to come back, that they want to talk to students. We've looked at, you know, Dennis wants to talk about students coming in about their college experience, their college process experience, and then moving beyond to the work experience, which is why even at the beginning of in the fall, why we decided to get the videos from some of our students that are already out in college, and what's their experience and what was their experience in relation to the programming that they had here at Leman. But I think moving forward, as you're indicating, is how they can start to build a network, and there is some of that happening within this alumni committee. We do collect the information, we continue to reach out to them to update the information, reach out to families of alumni to kind of get the new information. And we've also had, this year, we've had a couple of referrals from students that have graduated that want to send their younger siblings, like especially through boarding. We're getting more referrals from students that have graduated from our boarding and want their family members to come here. So I think that's a work in progress. It's happening through our college counseling department as well as our communications department. My assistant, Jen Minskoff, who many of you know, is also involved in that. We do have a young man who graduated in 2013 who's kind of taken the lead on this also, is working with us. So you'll continue to hear more about that. We're looking at trying to put more information out to the greater community about what our alumni is doing also. We've done a little bit of that over the past year, but more of that. So that's in process. There is a plan and a program in process. It's just growing it as a student thing. So as students graduate, we know where they are at that point. We continue to try to communicate with them. You know, the good thing about social media, about email addresses, usually people don't change those kind of things. They might change their residence, where it used to be, you know, you sent a mail, an alum, the old days, you sent alumni mail, you never know who it got to, but now we have more of that information. So it's a little bit easier to connect. So it starts as they start to graduate, we collect that information, and then they go into the alumni database, and we continue to connect with them through there.
Maria, I have one more question in the chat that's just come in related to COVID, that being in
still talking about COVID.
being in a state of normal is a blessing, but does Leman have a plan for when COVID surges?
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully you've seen that, you know, when one of the benefits we had in COVID is being an international community, and I think more than some other schools, we saw it coming, because when our boarding students, some of them couldn't get back after the Christmas holiday, after the winter holiday, sorry. Because of where they were coming from. And we thought, if it's happening there, what is the possibility of it happening here? So we started planning earlier, if you remember, before that March shutdown. So we were able to kind of pivot a little bit quicker. And that's because of this administrative team that came together really quickly. And we looked at every scenario. What if we can't be in school at all? What if we can be here part-time? What if we can be here full-time? What do we need to be in place? The administration came back in the summer and practiced going through all those routes that we had at the beginning to see how is that going to work for students. So I feel that we're already adept at planning if we have the surge. I think what we're also looking at is what have we learned through this and how do we move forward? One of the things Maria Sweeney and I have talked about at length is this idea of online learning, right? And for some students, there's a real benefit to that. How do we maybe continue that where the need is, but also how do you add some other experiences online that students can either choose to be in or add to their already very rigorous program that you might not have been able to get because you have someone who can teach from somewhere else. So we're looking at that, and we're going to take next year to really explore that option and see what do we learn through COVID and how do we continue to expand our instructional program that's really going to benefit our students, give them the most experiences that are going to make them stand out from others and really help prepare them again for the future. So I feel really confident about being prepared for another surge and what we've learned from our mistakes and our accomplishments, because certainly we pivoted through that too. If there's a surge and how we're going to move forward, just because it's a different future from what we learned from COVID. Any other final questions? Well, as always, I appreciate both online and here in person, your thoughtful questions, coming to these Leman exchanges to hear the information. Your questions help inform me and others about what's on your mind and what's important. As you know, my door and other doors are always open to information that you'd like to share. If you want to meet, suggestions that you have, we only grow together and we only continue to thrive together. So thank you so much for being here today, and we look forward to a bright future. Thanks.